Hello, boyos,
Boyos?
and welcome to Last Week in Games, where everything is video games. And today we are talking about the week of October 9th. Now let's just jump into what we lovingly call the titties. These are some tidbits of news that we think are worth mentioning. Well, this week there was a Bloomberg article stating that a bunch of execs are encouraging Bob Iger, who is the CEO of Disney, to buy EA or some other big publisher like that. Now, if you think it's impossible for EA to be purchased by somebody because there's such a huge company, like, why would they be bought? That would be super weird, right? Well, keep in mind that Activision Blizzard was just purchased, and also EA last year was in deep talks with NBC Universal to be purchased. Now, the reason I've put this here in the titties and not as an actual news article is that it doesn't seem like this is actually going to happen, but it is a possibility and something that is in the brain of Bob Iger currently. But there are no substantiated reports that EA and Disney are currently in the works of a buyout. But it is something that has been floated by Bob Iger's desk, and we can't rule it out completely. EA makes the most sense for Disney to buy if they do want to get into the publishing market, considering that EA has made several deals with Disney in the past, especially concerning something like Star Wars. As we all know, Disney made a deal with EA about 10 years ago now, that EA will be the only publisher to make Star Wars games for 10 years. That 10 years is coming up now, and we're finally starting to see potential other games in the Star Wars universe besides just the EA ones we've gotten. We've already heard about an Ubisoft Star Wars game coming in the future, and some other projects as well. Now, personally, I think if Disney were to buy EA, that would be a foolish decision for a multitude of reasons. For one, EA is kind of a terrible company and has kind of a stink on it, if we're being honest. The stink isn't nearly as bad as it was, let's say like 5-10 years ago, but the stink is still there. They're not exactly a beloved company, and for a company like Disney, who is currently kind of got a little bit of a stink on them right now, they may not want to acquire another company with such a strong stench. Now, another reason I think it might be foolish for Disney to get into the publishing world by buying EA is they already had studios and already published games. I mean, Epic Mickey comes to mind. And of course, they do own LucasArts, which is one of the most beloved studios to ever exist, and they don't really do anything with them. So if you're going to do it, why buy EA? Why not just start your own thing? And my final reason why I think it's just a foolish decision to purchase EA to get into the publishing world, video games are hard to do, and I think much harder than Disney would anticipate. I'm not saying movies and cinema and television are easy frontiers, but compared to making a video game, it's a totally different ballpark. And we see it all the time. So many video game companies can barely skirt by because it takes like 5-6 years sometimes to make a video game. We're seeing layoffs left and right. I don't think the video game industry is as profitable as Disney wants it to be. Now, that's not to say that the video game market isn't profitable. It is, and Disney sees that, and that is why they're saying you should get into this market. But it's not something where you can just put $1 into the vending machine and $1 million's going to come out. It is a slow process to try and make those profits, especially if you want to make good products and not hurt your brand, which EA was already doing a good job of hurting the Star Wars brand. Now, I think it was a blessing in disguise that EA was the ones making those horrible Star Wars games for 10 years, because that takes the blame a little bit off of Disney. Now, if Disney buys EA and EA starts to sort of flounder because Bob Iger who has no experience in the video game industry, destroys that company, that's going to make Disney look terrible, like just awful. And they're already in hard times. So I just think it's a really bad idea for them to get into it. And if they do get into it, I think it would be best for them to just start their own publishing service. And I think that's what's best for the video game market and as a whole, for both consumers and the creators. For one, it creates a whole new company for people to work at. And two, it creates more competition, which competition in the video game industry is always, always, always a good thing. So yeah, we can reconvene on this conversation when we actually see a merger happen. But at this point, to me, it doesn't seem very likely that a merger will happen between EA and Disney or Ubisoft and Disney. But we'll see. We'll see. It's totally, totally possible. All right, let's get into the news. All right. And our first big piece of news is something we've been speculating over here on Last Week in Games for a while. A new PS5 has been announced. These are some upgraded versions of the PS5 and the PS5 Digital. They're more slim versions, and reportedly these are supposed to just completely replace the original PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 5 digital versions, which is interesting because I don't think that was something that happened when slim versions were released in the past. I may be wrong about this, but I feel like in the past we always still had the larger versions and the slim versions were just other options, but correct me in the comments. I may be wrong about that. But let's take a look at what the new PS5 Slim looks like. Now, it's no surprise coming from me that I absolutely hated the original look of the PlayStation 5. The original PS5 had these like ugly side panels that just went up way too high. It was like super large, and like if you have it on your TV stand or whatever you have, it just sticks out like a sore thumb. And I've just always thought it was horrible. So hearing that there is a new PS5 Slim coming out, I got excited because I'm like, oh, this is going to be so much better. And let me tell you right now, I think it is so much better. It still has that original sort of look of the PS5, but as you can tell from the images I'm showing on the screen right now, they got rid of the side panels. The side panels are still there, but they don't stick up as far. And they also added this sort of sleek paneling design on the side where there's a sort of slit in the side. And the slit serves a purpose. According to the PlayStation blog, this new PS5 is 30% smaller by volume and weighs 18% less than the original PS5. So that already is fantastic. Now, the slits that I was describing on the sides of the PlayStation 5, I said they served a purpose, and as we scroll down here on the PlayStation blog, you can see what I mean. You can take off the bottom panel of a PS5 digital, and you can actually attach a disc tray. So if you decide down the line, oh man, I wish I got that disc version, you can actually just go buy the disc tray and attach it to your PlayStation 5 digital, which I think is super cool and just makes this thing way more modular, which I think has always been the future of console gaming, is more modular systems, easier to upgrade, more consumer friendly. That's always been the appeal of console gaming versus PC gaming, is ease of use. Now the top slot, the top half of the PlayStation 5 comes off as well. And what you find under there is it reveals the SSD card, making it much easier to replace your SSD if you wish to replace your SSD. Now, if we go to the pricing here in the US, the PlayStation 5 with Ultra HD Blu-ray disc drive is $499.99, and the PS5 Digital Edition is $449.99. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wasn't the digital version originally just $400? So is the digital version now $50 more? Yes, it is. Unfortunately, that is the case. But I will say the digital version now comes with a bigger SSD to justify that $50 jump. So all around, I think this is a good thing, except for one little problem. As you see here in every single picture, the PlayStation 5 is standing upright, as it appears it should. It just looks best when it's standing upright. Well, unfortunately, you need to buy an additional horizontal stand to have your PlayStation horizontal. And that stand is $30. I think this is ridiculous because the original PlayStation 5 comes with a horizontal stand in the case. And to me, this just seems like an easy way for people to make money. And by people, I mean Sony. Now, what I'm going to suggest to everyone who buys one of these consoles is just wait for these things to release, and I guarantee you can go on Etsy and find 3D printed versions of these things for $10. So just wait for that to happen. They did also say that a variety of PS5 console cover colors for the new model will be available starting in early 2024. I forgot to mention that they do plan on releasing this year for the holiday season. So I think this is pretty exciting news. I think it looks really good. I think it was much needed because I think that original PS5 design is just atrocious. I think the removable disc drive is such a good call. I've talked to many people who bought the digital version who kind of regret it now because they were gifted games, or their friends have physical games that they want to borrow and they just can't do it. Now you can buy the digital one, and for a while that might suit you. And in the future, if you want to borrow games from one of your friends who has like a huge library, you can go buy the disc tray for $50 and you're good to go. It's pretty reasonable. It's pretty good. I really enjoy that. I do think in the future we're going to be a digital only space here in the video game world, which I think is a total bummer because I think physical media really helps preserve history, both in video games and movies. Last week it was announced that Best Buy will not be selling physical movies anymore. So already people are worried about the preservation of movies. We've all been worried about the preservation of video games, and this just makes it even harder to preserve video games in the future. I think when the PS6 comes out, we will no longer have disk drives. And I think 20 years after the PS6, there's going to be a ton of games that can no longer be played, that will be lost to time. And that is just sad. With discs, we're kind of protected, sort of, because most games come with day one patches now. So in 20 years, a lot of these games won't have that day one patch, and we'll be playing broken, buggy versions of the games we remember. All right, let's move on to our next piece of news here. Unity CEO John Riccitiello resigns. This comes to us from Marcus Stewart over at Game Informer. Unity CEO John Riccitiello, I'm going to say it different every time because I have no idea how to pronounce his name, nor do I care to know how to say his name, has announced that he is retiring from the company effective immediately. The news comes almost a month after the company announced plans to introduce a controversial install fee for developers, which resulted in an industry-wide backlash. Riccitiello is stepping down as CEO, president, and member of the board of directors. In a press release, Unity states that James M. Whitehurst will take over as interim CEO, while the board seeks a permanent replacement. Whitehurst is a tech veteran who served as president at IBM from 2008 to 2020 and as senior advisor from 2021 to 2022. Quote, "It's been a privilege to lead Unity for nearly a decade and serve our employees, customers, developers, and partners, all of whom have been instrumental in the company's growth," Riccitiello says in a statement. "I look forward to supporting Unity through this transition and following the company's future success." Riccitiello became CEO of Unity in 2014, following his tenure as CEO at EA. Now, this is no surprise to me. A few weeks ago, we did talk about the Unity drama. Basically, Unity put out a statement saying, well, let's back it up even more. If you don't know what Unity is a video game engine that a lot of video games are made on. Basically, Unity said in a statement, I don't know, like a month ago, 2 months ago maybe, that they're releasing a new pricing model for video game developers, basically stating that they will charge for each time a video game is downloaded. So basically, let's use Cult of the Lamb as an example. If someone downloads Cult of the Lamb, that's 12 cents going straight to Unity. Now, if they uninstall it and reinstall it, that's another 12 cents to Unity. Terrible, terrible, terrible. And right after that, they had to release a statement basically saying, hey, we're going to relook at this because obviously you guys are upset about this and we're going to reassess. But ultimately, we've gotten no updates on what the new deal is going to look like. And even if they just reverted back to what it was before, a lot of video game developers have now lost all faith in Unity as a video game engine and probably will never use it again. This, without a doubt, is why John Resatello resigned from Unity. It seems like no surprise that this happened. And it's also no surprise to me that he was the CEO of EA 10 years ago, back when EA was the most hated company in the world. The fact that that man got hired at all is unbelievable. I think the fact that they're bringing in this guy, James M. Whitehurst, who was the president at IBM for a long time, is a great idea because obviously that guy has some familiarity with tech and how tech works. John Resatello doesn't seem to understand how tech works at all. A lot of people were claiming that that model that they were describing, pay per download or whatever it was, both didn't make sense technologically and legally. So no surprise that they would fire him because the plan to change their pricing model seemed half-baked at most and illegal at worst. So not much to add about that. Rest in peace, you piece of... All right, let's get into our last piece of news here. Microsoft has officially acquired Activision Blizzard for $69 billion. This comes from Wesley LeBlanc over at Game Informer. It's official. Microsoft has acquired Activision Blizzard, the company behind franchises like Call of Duty, Overwatch, Diablo, and World of Warcraft for a colossal $69 billion. Earlier this morning, the UK's Competition and Markets Authority approved Microsoft's $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard. The CMA was the last hurdle for Microsoft's acquisition after it received approval in more than 40 countries and regions, including the United States, earlier this summer. The deadline for Microsoft to close this deal was October 18th, but reports indicate that the company was planning to finalize it today, October 13th. That has now happened, and Activision Blizzard is officially part of Xbox's first-party studio umbrella. Now, we knew it was coming, and it's official now. Microsoft now owns Activision, which is just unbelievable to me. I knew it was going to happen as soon as the talks started spreading around. I knew this was going to go through. I knew it was only a matter of time. Personally, not a huge fan of this acquisition, but we'll see what comes of it. The question now is, when are these games going to come to Game Pass? I guess that's the question everyone's asking right now. When is Call of Duty coming to Game Pass? Is World of Warcraft going to be on Game Pass? That would be absolutely insane. Is Overwatch going to be on Game Pass? You know? And when does it happen? My guess is we'll see it as early as December. We'll probably see a lot of these games next year, though, because technically they weren't allowed to start working on any of that before the acquisition. So now that the acquisition has happened, they can immediately start going into that stuff, but I think it'll probably take a minute to work out the logistics of all of that. I think from that aspect, kind of exciting, right? Like if they put the entire back catalog of Call of Duty onto Game Pass, that's kind of exciting, kind of cool. World of Warcraft on Game Pass, like you have a Game Pass subscription, now you have a World of Warcraft subscription. That would be pretty nuts. But ultimately, I'm curious to see how this affects Xbox in the long run, considering they've had a hard time juggling the studios they currently have, right? Halo came out and it was a colossal mess. It seems like stuff over at Bethesda is a little uneven too. Not that Starfield's a bad game, and I'm not even discussing Starfield here. Starfield to me was a good game. But I'm more talking about the statements that Pete Hines made earlier this year when discussing exclusivity. Basically, Phil Spencer was saying Call of Duty is not going to be an exclusive game. It'll be on everything. And then Pete Hines came out and said, well, that's what they said about us over at Bethesda. Yet here we are with Starfield being an exclusive, which to me seems like a sort of miscommunication within the teams. How do you juggle this many teams? Does Activision get absorbed by Microsoft and just become a Microsoft studio, right? Like we get rid of the Activision banner and now we've got Sledgehammer making Call of Duty, and Activision is nowhere to be seen because Activision kind of has a bit of a stink on it. So are we just going to see these studios sort of just migrate into Microsoft? Or is Activision going to remain its sort of own entity? These are all questions I can't wait to see the answer to. And I don't think we'll get a lot of these answers until at least next year. I don't think Activision's going to go away like right away. If they do decide to like dissolve Activision and then just turn these studios into sort of Microsoft studios, I think we'll see a thing where like Activision is around for at least like another year or two before they start just sort of moving more and more of those studios. Like maybe we want to see another Crash Bandicoot game, but that's not done under the Activision banner. It's done under the Xbox banner, right? I hope that makes sense the way I'm trying to describe it. So we'll see how that all plays out. I do think it makes sense to have like Xbox Studios as its own thing, Activision as its own thing, Bethesda as its own thing, just to make the micromanaging of all of those studios and employees more manageable. Because I don't think Xbox has so many studios now, like it's impossible for them to oversee everything, right? So there's going to be a breakdown in communication somewhere, right? When I think of PlayStation, they have like fucking 12 studios or something. They probably have more than that, but like really I can think of like 12 of them. But Xbox has like hundreds now because I think Bethesda itself had like 12 studios. So, and Activision has at least 12 studios, right? So like that's just a lot of studios that they're having to keep track of. So I just can't imagine that being great. Now, the other thing I wonder about this Activision Blizzard merger with Xbox is Xbox going to go into Activision and see that the work culture is just like totally fucked up? Because we had gotten so many reports prior to the buyout of Activision of like just total workplace harassment, sexual assault, bigotry, like all of that stuff was happening at Activision. Just quote unquote boys club sort of stuff going on. And how does Microsoft go in and handle that? I hope that's their first order of business, because that's something that's been terrible over at Activision. And if we could see one good thing come of it, that would be a great thing to come of this merger. Another thing worth mentioning here is Bobby Kotick did put out a statement. Bobby Kotick, for those of you who don't know, was the CEO of Activision Blizzard. And he did basically say, hey, I plan on remaining the CEO of Activision Blizzard at least until the end of 2023. And according to my watch right now, which I'm of course wearing a watch, is about 2 more months. My assumption is they're going to pay him out to get the fuck out of there. And this is what I mean, right? Bethesda still has Pete Hines, who runs Bethesda underneath Xbox. What happens when Bobby Kotick leaves Activision? Do they replace him with someone else? Or do they just say, hey, Phil Spencer is now in charge of all of this, both Xbox and Activision? That's kind of my question right now. I don't know what that sort of looks like. So we'll see. We'll see in the coming months. It's a wild time to be a gamer. I wouldn't necessarily say it's a good time, although we're going to get into next week in games. And I will say we got some big ass games coming out next week. But before we get to that, let's talk about some OpenCritic scores. For those of you who don't know, OpenCritic is a conglomerate of all different video game reviewers. So it takes like IGN, GameSpot and sort of turns them all into one big score. And if you look here, Assassin's Creed Mirage is currently sitting at a 77 on OpenCritic. Detective Pikachu is sitting at a 68. People not really digging that game, unfortunately. Forza Motorsport getting an 84. No surprise there. All of those games always do great. And then this one was sort of an interesting one over here. Sonic Superstars got a 76. Pretty good, but probably not as good as what the Sonic fans were hoping from that game. Our final order of business here is to talk about what's coming out next week, and let's get into it. SpongeBob SquarePants The Cosmic Shake is coming to PlayStation and Xbox Series X/S on October 16th. Cybernight's Flashpoint is coming to PC, Mac, Linux, all of that stuff, October 17th. Mortal Kombat Onslaught is coming to iOS and Android on October 17th. Skull Island Rise of Kong is coming to everything on October 17th. Sonic Superstars is coming to PlayStation 5. It's coming to everything, October 17th. Wizard Without a Gun is coming to PS5, Xbox Series X, and PC on October 17th. Mike Mignola's Hellboy Web of Weird is coming to everything on October 18th. I completely forgot about that game, and I remember thinking that game looked pretty fucking cool, but I haven't heard anything since its announcement, so I'm pretty curious to see how that one turns out. Slender The Arrival is coming to PS5 and Xbox Series on October 18th. Endless Dungeon is coming to everything on October 19th. Galactic Civilization 4 Supernova is coming to PC October 19th. Gangs of Sherwood is coming to PS5 and the Xbox Series and PC on October 19th. Gargoyles Remastered is coming to next-gen console. Not next-gen consoles, excuse me. It's coming to Xbox Series, PlayStation 4, Switch, and PC. So not PS5, but you can play it on your PS5 through the PS4 on October 19th. Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 Turbocharged is coming to everything on October 19th. Overpass 2 is coming to PS5, Xbox Series, and PC on October 19th. The Seventh Guest VR is coming to PSVR 2, Quest, and PC on October 19th. The Gap is coming to PS5, Xbox Series X, PC on October 19th. The Jackbox Party Pack 10 is coming to everything on October 19th. World of Horror is coming to PS5, PS4, Switch, and PC on October 19th. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is coming to PlayStation 5 on October 20th. And Super Mario Bros. Wonder is coming to Switch on October 20th. And let me tell you, we got a stacked week next week with Sonic, Marvel Spider-Man 2, and Super Mario Bros. Wonder all coming out in the same week. Absolutely terrifying. And I don't know what our wallets are going to do. And I don't know what I'm going to do about work. Am I supposed to work, or do I just call out? Leave a comment. Let me know if I should call out of work. Anyway, thanks for joining, everyone. Check out some of our other content over on the YouTube channel. We do spoiler casts. We plan on doing an Ahsoka spoiler casts hopefully next week, so keep an eye out for that. We've done all of the Star Wars stuff. We've done all of the Marvel stuff, so keep an eye out. We'll do Loki when it's done as well, so definitely keep an eye out for that stuff. And check us out on twitch.tv/lonercast, where we're streaming all the time. And by we're, I mean I'm streaming all the time over on twitch.tv/lonercast. Me and my friend Corey have a farm and farm sim. I've been playing Ratchet and Clank over there. And I was planning on playing Cocoon sometime this week, because I'd love to play that as well. Trying to decide if I should stream Spider-Man. I don't think I will, because I think I just want to keep that game to myself. That's my game that I'm going to play. So anyway, that's our show. Check us out wherever you find podcasts as well. I post these on podcast services, specifically Spotify. If you look up Last Week in Games, you can find us over there. So once again, I really appreciate you, and we'll see you next week.